What's up, ladies and gents, Ghost here, back with another Battlefield 4 guide, and today we're going to be talking about the stats in Battlefield 4 for the weapons. We're going to be going over all of the attachments as well, and I'm just going to be explaining to you guys essentially what all the attachments do and what all the stats actually mean. Now, if you're a veteran Battlefield player and you have a deep understanding of the stats system within the game, and you already know what all of the attachments do, then this video probably isn't going to be a huge help for you. But if you're a new player, or even if you're not a new player but you'd like to know a little bit more behind some of the meanings like bullet velocity or first shot multiplayer, and you find yourself scratching your head when you hear these terms in videos, then hopefully this video should help you out. Alright guys, so I figured the best way to do this would be simply to start running over all of the stats within the game, and if I mention any particular stat that has attachments that are relative to it, I'll also mention those attachments as well and fully explain what they do and what kind of an impact they're going to have upon your weapon. Alright, so let's kick things off with a nice easy one here. RPM stands for rounds per minute, and this is how many rounds your weapon can put downrange within 1 minute of time. So say you take a weapon like the AEK, it has 900 RPM. If you would shoot that weapon for a minute, and theoretically, if you had unlimited ammunition, so you didn't have to reload, you just had a clip in there that had unlimited rounds in it, you would be able to shoot 900 rounds of ammunition if you fired the weapon non-stop within that minute. Now, generally speaking, the higher the RPM, the more damage you're going to be able to put out with that weapon in a shorter amount of time, but also the more recoil you can expect from the weapon. Next up, we have bullet velocity. This is measured in meters per second, and this tells you how fast your bullets will travel. So if a weapon has a bullet velocity of 500 meters per second, every second that bullet will travel 500 meters. So essentially, if you're shooting a target that is 1,000 meters away or 1 kilometer, it will take your bullet 2 seconds to get there. If your bullet velocity is only 250 meters per second, it will take that bullet 4 seconds to get there. So you can see where I'm going with this. There's currently no attachment in the game that can buff your bullet velocity. Back in Battlefield 3, the heavy barrel actually used to buff your bullet velocity, but it no longer does that in Battlefield 4 anymore. However, there is one attachment that will nerf your bullet velocity quite considerably, and that is the silencer. So just be aware whenever you put a silencer on a weapon, you are going to have to lead your targets a little bit more depending upon the range. Alright, next up we've got damaged models and damaged drop-offs. Now, I think a lot of people understand the damaged models, but they don't really get how drop-offs work. So if I give an example here and we take a look at the AEK, we have a max damage of 25 and a minimum of 18. And I think that when a lot of people hear that, they think that their weapon is going to do a random amount of damage, just somewhere between 25 and 18 at random. And that's not how it works. And to understand how much damage your weapon is going to do at various ranges, you need to take a look at the drop-off. So, as you can see on the AEK, we have a drop-off start distance of 8 meters. Now, what that essentially means is that your weapon will do maximum damage, so in this case, 25 points in a body shot up to 8 meters away. Once you get further than 8 meters away from your target, that amount of damage that the weapon does is going to slowly start to drop off before the lower end of things, in this case, 18 damage. Now the drop off end for this weapon is 55 meters. So between that 8 meter and 55 meter range, your damage is going to be dropping off from 25 down to 18. Once your target gets over 55 meters away, the damage of your weapon will no longer be reduced. So after that, it doesn't matter whether your target is 100 meters away, 200, 500 meters away. As long as the bullet can hit him, it's always going to do a minimum of 18 damage. Now, it's also worth mentioning here that where you hit your enemy matters. There are different multiplayers for damage models within Battlefield 4. If you hit somebody in the chest or arms, that is a 1 times multiplier. It will do the normal amount of damage. However, if you hit somebody in the head, it will do double damage. There is a 2 times multiplier on any headshot in the game, except if you're using some special weapons like bolt action sniper rifles, slugs with the shotguns, the Magnum, or the MP412 Rex. They actually have a 2.3 times multiplier to the head. Apart from that, all the other weapons in the game will do 2 times damage to the head, and it's also worth mentioning that if you hit somebody in the stomach or legs, that will actually do less than normal damage. You only get a 0.93 multiplier there, so it will only do 93% of the normal damage. Okay guys, so next we're going to be talking recoil, and this is where we're really going to start getting into a lot of the attachments for the game. So weapons in Battlefield 4 have three different kinds of recoil. They have upwards recoil pull, they have left recoil pull, and they have right recoil pull. And this essentially dictates how much the weapon is going to deviate from where you're aiming when you actually fire the weapon. Now, it's definitely worth going over to simthic.com and taking a look at the stats for a weapon when you're trying to decide whether you should use a compensator or a muzzle brake. If you look in-game, all it will tell you is that those attachments buff the stability of your weapon, but it doesn't really explain which one is better to use. Now, the muzzle brake is going to make the upwards recoil of the weapon a little bit less, and the compensator is going to reduce the side-to-side recoil. And as a general rule of thumb, I like to use the compensator more than the muzzle brake. And the reason for that is that vertical recoil can be compensated for by the player. All you need to do is pull down with the weapon on your mouse or your right thumbstick in order to compensate for that upwards recoil pull. But when it comes to side-to-side shudder, there's really nothing you can do about that. Just to show you guys an example here, we're going to take a look at a weapon with particularly high recoil in all three fields here, the FAMAS, and as you can see, it's one of the highest rate of fire weapons in the game. It has 1000 RPM, and as such, as I mentioned earlier in the video, comes with quite a lot of recoil. Now on this weapon we have 0.4 upwards pull, 0.4 left, and 0.4 right pull here. And for me, it would be a no-brainer to go with the compensator on this weapon. 0.4 left and 0.6 right is a lot of side-to-side shudder, and that is the amount of degrees within the game that the weapon can randomly shudder from side to side, meaning that your bullets are going to essentially miss their mark. So putting the compensator on there will reduce that somewhat, and then I will be simply able to compensate for the upwards recoil pull with my mouse hand. Now, something else to take into account is the difference in the side-to-side recoil of weapons. Some weapons may have equal side-to-side recoil, so let's say a gun has 0.4 left and 0.4 right pull. It's probably best to just stick a compensator on there and compensate for the upwards recoil by pulling down on your mouse or your right thumbstick. However, in the case of the FAMAS, as you can see, it's actually going to be pulling a little bit more to the right than it is the left. So when you pull down to compensate for the vertical recoil, you'll also probably need to pull the weapon a little bit to the left just to make up for the differences in side-to-side recoil. So next we have your aiming down sight and hipfire spread. These numbers will tell you how accurate your weapon will be whilst aiming down sights, whilst ADSing and moving, whilst hipfiring, whilst you're standing, crouched, prone, etc. You can see all of those numbers once again over on simthic.com. So this is where the laser sight comes into its own. It's going to buff your hipfire whether you're standing, crouched or prone. Now if you're somebody who likes to stay on the move, you might want to use the ergo grip. This will buff your spreads here whilst you're hipfiring. It will also buff your spread whilst you're ADSing and moving. However, if you're somebody who likes to ADS a lot, stand still, aim in and go for the kill, it's probably not the right grip for you. Now, to the right of those numbers, you have your bullet spread increase, or bullet bloom as some people prefer to call it, and this dictates how much your spread will increase after each bullet that you fire. So this essentially applies to full auto fire. Now, the higher this number, the worse. The more your spread is going to get thrown off, it's going to start going all over the show, and your fire that you're putting downrange is going to become less and less accurate. Now, if you run with the stubber grip, which personally is probably my favourite grip and my most used grip, this will actually decrease the bullet spread increase or your bullet bloom for each shot that you fire. So this essentially means that before you may have only been able to do a 3, 4, 5 round burst, and then you had to stop firing the weapon, let it level out again and begin a new burst. But now with the stubby grip on there, you may be able to get away with firing 5, 6, maybe 7 rounds and keeping those accurate and on target. Now, if you're wondering what the green letters are underneath there, you don't really need to pay any attention for those. This is your spread decrease, and it dictates how many degrees your spread will decrease by once you stop firing your weapon. But this is 15 across the board for every single weapon in the game, so it's not really a stat that you need to pay attention to. As I mentioned before, the suppressor will make you invisible on the minimap, and it will also hide your flash of your weapon, but it will reduce your bullet velocity. On top of that, it also reduces your hipfire accuracy, so it's going to increase the spread of your hipfire. So bear that in mind. If you use the flash hider, however, this will not stop you showing up on the minimap, but it will hide the flash of your weapon. Now this comes with the added benefit over the suppressor that it won't reduce your bullet velocity and it won't reduce your hipfire accuracy. So it essentially has no penalties, but it will hide the flash of your weapon. And just to quickly mention the heavy barrel, this isn't a popular attachment in Battlefield 4, it's been extremely popular in Battlefield 3, in fact I almost always use the heavy barrel, and I have literally never used it in Battlefield 4. All it does is it buffs your spread a little bit, so actually using the heavy barrel in conjunction with the stubby grip can give you a very tight spread and allow you to be very accurate. However, it will also increase the upwards recoil of the weapon, and currently in Battlefield 4 it just doesn't really seem worth the trade-off. It did so many good things in Battlefield 3, increase your bullet velocity, it increased your drop-off start and end, it increased a lot of awesome things, but in Battlefield 4 it doesn't really seem to cut the cheese, to be honest, and DICE have actually said that they are going to buff this in a future patch, so once that patch comes out I'm definitely looking forward to trying out the heavy barrel once again. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. I know it was a long one, so if you sat through the entire thing, then thank you so much for doing so. I hope this cleared up a few things, though, and now whenever you listen to a review of a weapon, whether it be one of my gun guides or something over on Level Cap's channel or whatever, hopefully now when people are talking about things like first shot multipliers and bullet bloom and all that kind of thing, you understand exactly what they're talking about now. I would like to extend my thanks to Simthic.com. Those guys over there have an awesome website detailing every single weapon within Battlefield 4. They also do it for a number of other games, Battlefield 3. I think they do it for Call of Duty as well, and Medal of Honor Warfighter even. So go and check them out if you haven't already. It's definitely worth looking up some of your favourite weapons, and maybe you'll find some improvements that you can actually make to your loadout over your current setup. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, give it a like down below, subscribe for more tips and tricks in Battlefield 4 in the future, and I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.